Hi, Misha here, and recently revisited the P38 and kind of a 101 guide. Then did a video kind of looking at what I call the lost generation of Walthers from the P4, P5, P88, and ending with the P9. And even though there's something really new to talk about here, I figured, hey, let's finish what we started and talk about the modern Walthers. Those that have been on the market for the past 20 years or so. And we won't talk much about the P99 in this video because we already did in the past one, but we will have it out along with the compact version for comparison. These are roughly analogous to, say, the Glock 19 here and the Glock 26 here. And then we'll move in to the PPS, the Police Pistol Slim. Now you might think this might be analogous to some other slimline Glocks. It is not. Walther beat Glock to the market with this by about a decade, and even other companies like Smith & Wesson by a good 5 years. And so my point is, Walther led the pack with full power concealable pistols. And then in 2011, they introduced the Ppq, which in a lot of ways is a P99 Gen 3, and we recently did a video shooting this suppressed, so I won't probably talk a whole lot about it, but we gotta have it out, right? And those kind of are the first generation, released between 96 and 2011. With the second generation, we have the PPX, today known as the Creed. This was an economy version of the P99, introduced around 2013, but it's actually much more than that. We'll talk about that again. Over here, we have another interesting entry that you don't hear a lot about today. This is another kind of concealable gun, somewhere between the Glock 26 and the Glock 19 sizing. This is the Ccp, and this uses an interesting operating system copied from a Heckler & Koch NHK. Moving on. Much as they have done with other guns, a new generation of PPSs was introduced in 2016, known as the Pps M2, with several changes and some improvements. We'll talk about that. And then the most modern one that I probably have here, they finally did a double stack compact Ppq. This is a Ppq M2C or just Ppq-C. And so this is pretty much a generation 2 of the P99 Compact. So you can see how they improve their designs. They don't just make 100 different things and what works does and what doesn't. They take their time. But in this video, I want to show how they do evolve their designs more than certain other companies. Glock. Sorry, I've got a cold today. And so, yeah, let's just chat for a while. It's me, so you know it's going to be a while, about modern Walthers. I really do have a bit of a scratchy throat today, so apologies in advance for any unpleasant noises. As I talked about in the last video, the P99 and the P99 Compact. Here they are in their cases. This is a generation 1, so it has the so-called ski hump here. And the older style grip texturing, although the ergonomics are still very much the same. And it used these slick-sided mags that hold 16 rounds and have a have kind of a blued style finish with a polymer base plate. This was a striker fired gun. Originally it was introduced with this really nice trigger system that has single and double action, complete with decocker up here, interchangeable sights, metal or polymer, and it originally had a proprietary rail, as did HK in the 90s. And they did work on these beginning in 1994. They were unveiled in 96 and were on the market by 97. This was the kind of the initial version. In 1999, they introduced a DAO, double action only version, really at the request of police that have pretty strict trigger requirements in Germany. They want at least the first pull to be nearly 7 pounds, and they want the reset to be at least a 1/4 inch, and the overall length to be at least 1/2 inch. But this was designed for the police market, the military market, and the civilian market, in kind of that order, and it did achieve success. The P99, even today, a 1/4 century later, is still popular in Europe. And the basic design has not changed. In 2000, they introduced the quick action version, the QA, which is similar but not the same as a Glock partially cocked striker system. And then in 2004, running through 2005 really, they introduced Generation 2. A big difference, they went to a standard pick rail with one slot under the barrel. By the way, these all have traditional rifle barrels, not polygonal. They went to larger serrations. And they got rid of the ski hump, and they extended the paddle mag release, a mag release that I really like. And by this time, they're using the name P99AS for the original double single action simulated trigger system, P99 DAO, or P99 0 for the double action only version, and P99 QA for this version. And of course, they're also offering these in 40 Smith & Wesson in addition to 9mm. One thing to note, if you look in the back here, you can see the striker tail stick out. The same in this version. Notice how when it's cocked, it sticks out. Pull the trigger, it goes in. That was a cocked indicator. I am mentioning it for a reason. And these are all coming with back straps. The full size has 3. The compact comes with 2 back straps. And here are the original compact mags. This is the one with the finger rest. Interestingly, this body, which holds 10 rounds, was used during the assault weapons ban for the American guns. And what they would do, they would just put on an extended base plate. Now, the P99 is really not offered in America anymore, although it is still technically in production, not only in Ulm, Germany, but also in Radom, Poland, where it's made under license. And it's used by several police, not just within Germany, but also without, including Canada. Even a couple of departments in the U.S. have used them over the years. Finland uses them, and some military users have used them as well. Special forces within Germany, the Finnish border guards. Compared to the P88, this was a runaway success. So it really helped revitalize Walther, who at this time is pretty much under Umrich, and Smith & Wesson is handling importation, taking over from Interarms. With the P99s, Walther was playing catch-up with companies like Glock. I would say that it's an improved version of a Glock in a lot of ways, but anyway, that's an argument for another day. But with the next version, the PPS, the Police Pistol Slim, Walther started to lead the way, at least for full power concealable handguns. And officially this was to take over from the very dated PPK-S family. The PPK was a blowback gun, so it was not capable of firing 9x19 parabellum, much less 40 Smith & Wesson. It really maxed out at either 32 or 380, although there was a modified version known as the PP Super that fired 9x18. But that's as much as you can get out of a blowback. For more, you have to go to a locked breech. And that's what they did with the PPS. Introduced in the summer of 2007, these first appeared in America around Christmas of that year. And it's very much based on the P99, as you can tell by the lines. Even using a lot of the same grip ergonomics. The P99 here has a 4-inch barrel. The P99 Compact has a 3.5-inch barrel. And the PPS has a 3.2-inch barrel. The full size weighs about 22 ounces unloaded. The Compact is about 18 ounces unloaded. And honestly, the PPS is about the same, 18 to 19 ounces unloaded. It's actually just a little bit heavier than the P99 Compact. We'll talk about why in a minute. Overall length, the full size is about 7.1 inches. The Compact is about 6.6 inches. And the PPS here is about 6.3 inches. So it is smaller in the dimensions, but where it really wins out is when it comes to overall thickness. The full size, of course, is just that. Well over an inch across, closer to 1.5 inches in some areas. The Compact is the same because of the double stack magazine. And this is where Walther really did something new. They went back to a slimline frame for a single stack magazine at a time when everyone was still focused on double stack. And by doing so, they were able to make it just under 1 inch thick. And as anyone who's ever concealed carry knows, that difference, even a 1/4 inch up to 1/2 inch difference, really matters when it comes to things like printing. So it's smaller in all dimensions, not any lighter, but yeah. It uses a modified version of the partially cocked striker system from the P99 QA. See the tail sticking out there. It actually uses the exact same sights. All of these guns can interchange sights. This one has the metal sights on it. It retains the single slot pick-row. It has the 2nd generation P99 spaced slide serrations. It has a modified version of the mag release. This is a single piece that lips up on both sides. They tried to make it where it wouldn't catch, but still easy enough to use. I don't think they failed. The slide release is here. It is a slim line with a little protective guard. And for added safety, we now have a trigger dingus. You might think this is new. It's not. The original P99 had a split trigger system too. They just happened to do away with it by 1998. So they reintroduced it for safety because concealed carry. Another feature that these had, the back straps are interchangeable. Wikipedia says there were 3 sizes. There are actually just 2, small and large. You can take them off. And you cannot use the pistol. Walther called this the quick safe system. You know, around this time, 2007, a lot of American guns, especially like Smith & Wesson's, had key locks. Part of it was legislation, part of it was worry that children or others might pick up a gun and not know what they're doing. Walther's solution was a little different. They figured, well, if you're concealing carrying, you might be stopping off at a friend's house, or if you're giving this to a police officer, which they did market these as kind of backup guns or undercover guns, you might be in a situation where you have to put your gun down, take it out. You know, if you're going into a post office, you might want to pull it out and put it in your car. But what if there are kids nearby? You won't have time to visit with a lock, but you would have time to quickly pop that off without a tool or anything, and the gun is rendered inert. And now, would I trust it 100%? No. But there it is back on. It's actually very tight, even though this gun is quite old now. It still fits very tight. And now it's back to operable. I thought it was an interesting thing, but a lot of people criticized it, saying, what if this system breaks? But it never has. In all the years that the PPSs have been out there, this system doesn't seem to break. One thing that did break early on, or at least not work 100%, was the slide stop. With the early versions, back in 2007, sometimes the slide stop would ride up and get caught in the up position. They caught this issue very early, and they offered a free retrofit for existing guns, and of course they changed the production line immediately. And all they had to do was introduce a slightly larger, reshaped slide stop, and they gave it a stronger, reworked spring. And problem solved. I actually had a very early PPS, and my cousin still has it to this very day. It never had that issue, so it wasn't like they all did. It wasn't endemic. It was just a possible issue. I really like the PPS. I really do. Here it is with the 6-round mag. Very slim, gives you that 2-finger grip. They also made them with a 7-round mag, which gives you kind of a compact grip, but you can get your pinky on if a little bit hanging off. Or you can go to the full 8-round magazine, which not only gives you a full grip for your pinky, it even has a little bumper to keep it from slipping off. And this is really the same size, height-wise, as the P99 over here. So, put it over. It's actually a tiny bit shorter. Still. And that gives you 8+1 capacity. And for a defensive gun in 9mm, generally speaking, I think we could agree that's plenty. So you can kind of size the gun for your need. And it had the typical quality and durability of Walther. Well-made German barrel. These all use the Tenifer treatment for the slide, which, you know, Tenifer is a very well-renowned finishing system that actually penetrates the metal and is really good about protecting against sweat. Very nice for a carry gun. The polymer is reinforced. The guide rails that the slide is on are steel, and it contacts at least at 4 points. These are well-built guns, just what you'd expect out of Ulm, Germany. In fact, by 1999, Walther was no longer making steel-framed guns at Ulm, Germany. They had switched pretty much over entirely to their polymer series. And like I said, this is about the same weight as the P99C, maybe even just a hair heavier. Why is that? Well, for the slim nature, they did make the slide a little different. It's a little bit heavier, dutier slide that adds a little weight. It also uses the kind of double recoil spring that's pretty famous from the Glock 26 here. And that's a little heavier. And our quick safe system adds a little bit of weight in the rear of the frame because it is made with steel, not plastic components. And the magazines here are still kind of this blued metal single stack. By the way, by this point, Walther is not making magazines in-house. They had not done so for quite some time. They are being made in Italy by Metgar, the mag maker of the world that does a fantastic job. In 2011, the police pistol quick defense PPQ or Ppq appeared kind of without a whole lot of fanfare. And part of this is because it was really just a rebranded P99Q, a specialized version that Walther worked with Poland to create. We might think of it as a P99 Generation 3. Now, if you've noticed between Generation 1 and 2 of the P99, there are some pretty easy to call out changes. And when we get to Generation 3, there are no difference. I mean, it's the same situation. Easy to tell them apart. Now, this is my so-called first edition. We recently did a video shooting it with the suppressor. Has the threaded barrel. And these come with a few extra gobbledygooks, mag loader, an extra mag. Yeah, and they still have the back straps. So let's pull this over here for a second. Notice how similar. In fact, dimensionally, they would be the same. P99, Ppq. Now mine has a 4.6 inch barrel. The standard barrel would be 4.1 inches. Why did they move away from 4.0 to 4.1? Canada. In Canada, that's the limit. So they slightly increased the barrel to make it Canadian legal, at least on some models. And they really took their time and did this gun right. A few things to call out. We have the same kind of wide rear serrations. Now we have front serrations to go with. Funnily enough, we're still using the same style of sights. These first editions come with true tritium night sights. We have this new slide release, long and thin, and it's ambidextrous. This actually was introduced pretty late in P99 Generation 2 production. I know this for a fact because I've had a few 99s that came in with it. We have redone the grip. This is the Octopus Grip. It might look different, but honestly it's just the P99's basic grip. It's just a little rounded on the sides where this is pretty flat. This has more rounded surfaces, a little more full grip there. And just kind of a, not even, I wouldn't call this a rough texture, semi-rough at most. And the back straps to match. Still has small, medium, and large. Still has the lanyard attachment like the P99 in the back here. But they did rework the magazines. This is the standard mag. You get the one out of the Generation 1 here. Now, you'll notice the ribbing. That was done to easily identify. And again, this was a change first made with the P99 Generation 2. They went to this new style magazine with a new body layout and a new follower to improve reliability. There was a minor cost. The original mag here held 16 rounds. Because of the reworked body and everything and the stronger spring, the new Generation 2 mag holds 15. But for improved reliability, durability, longevity, I think everyone would agree it's kind of worth it. Now, the P99 Gen 2 mags, they'll say P99 on the base, and your Ppq mags have kind of this PVD style coating on them. They don't call it PVD, but then they claim it has the same features. And since all the mags, like from Beretta and everything, come out of Metgar, yeah, anyway. But the P99 Gen 2 mags, while they have the same body, still have that kind of blued finish. So there is a finish difference between P99 Gen 2 and Ppq mags. They also introduced this style of mag here that holds 17 rounds. I guess that was to kind of make up for the loss of 1 round. It's the same body, it just has an extended base plate. I can't really show you because I have a device on, but they also went from a single slot to a 3-slot pick rail under the barrel. Mag release is pretty much the same as a Gen 2. Takedown's the same here. But of course, the big difference, the big thing that everyone thinks of with the Ppq, it's trigger. This is based on the P99 QA, but whereas the QA was partially cocked, this is 100% cocked, although some sources say 99% cocked. Pre-cocked, I guess, would be precision there. This gives a more consistent and smooth pull. They deleted the indicator in the back, which really wasn't terribly useful on the QA anyway, and by taking that hole out, you just take one point where dirt could get in. Funnily enough, you could put a longer firing pin in that. I've actually seen a demo gun from Walther that had the P99 style rear plate and striker in, so they are interchangeable. At least some can be. I thought that was funny. The triggers on these, you have to feel it. The numbers really don't do it justice. Like a lot of the other versions, it has about a 0.1 reset. That's kind of standard, even with the original here, at least in its AS mode, single action. That's back here. So I don't. Still has a very short reset. But this is just a little smoother, and it's lighter. The AS trigger pull and single action again. It's not bad. It's got a bit of a wall, but this is just nicer. I would say this is at least 5 pounds, maybe 4.5, whereas the older versions were maybe 5.5, maybe 5 if you have a well broken in gun. So maybe a ½ pound to a pound lighter pull. And this is when they started to really offer threaded barrels as an option. They're threaded 1/28. These are often called SD, which is German for silencer, silenced. They introduced this in 2011, like I said. They would later introduce the Ppq Navy, which was specialized to work around water. Even though they developed this for the military, police, and the civilian market, the police in Germany can't use it because the trigger pull is too light. That doesn't mean other police can't, but it is a light pull. And to help compensate, they have the trigger dingus from the original P99 / the PPS here. That helps some, but yeah. So this has been used by the German military a bit, and a few others besides. And it really is based on the the P99Q, the P99 RAD for Radom design. But what really took off was the civilian market, and of course, the only really good civilian handgun market in the world is America. And this brought Walther back. The P99 brought Walther back in Europe, and it was kind of a kept secret in America. Those of us who owned them loved them, but they weren't as available as Glocks or others. But But the PPQ, this really brought some attention. And I think what helped it, they just brought them out. They just released them in the summer of 2011 without a whole bunch of fanfare or hype. And then they shut them off at SHOT Show, but yeah. And it was just, it had all the refinements that people wanted from the P99. And it's still very, very popular today, and just as reliable as anything like a Glock. This still has tinifer-coated metal. Still has traditional rifled bore. High quality in the durability department that you would expect. And they make like all kinds of versions and variants of this gun today. Now, Smith & Wesson was the original importer of these, but their contract would end. They had a contract, I think it was for a decade, in 2012, and it was not renewed. Instead, Walther would take the reins themselves, and would come to Arkansas because they knew what a big fan of their guns I am. Immediately after taking over, Walther USA out of Fort Smith, Arkansas, expanded the product line. This, of course, included the Ppq M2 that we'll talk about in a minute. But it also included this gun, the PPX. Walther classified this upon launch as an entry-level or economy-level duty pistol. So it was still targeted at the law enforcement market somewhat. But to be fair, it was mostly civilian here. Very much based on our existing designs. Do another overview here. P99, PPQ, and now the PPX. Same basic grip here. But this was a much cheaper gun. The P99 was actually the most expensive of these. The PPQ brought costs down a little bit through various techniques, including slightly cheaper packaging. And the PPX really brought them down to a line where they were expected to sell for about $400. And of course, you've been able to find them for $300 or less, too. For a true German-made gun, that is great. And these are true German-made, or were. They're no longer in production now. That's great. But do they sacrifice too much? Somewhat, that's up for you to decide. They went away from the removable back straps. This just has a permanently molded in medium. Still has the same rough texture, but they did simplify the sides. The Octopus Grips on this one, that's gone. Still has front and rear slide serrations, but they're much shallower, and that's because the way the slide is made, it's more of a, it looks like a casting of some type. It could just be a very simplified, it's very boxy, very squared off shape. But anyway, they simplified the slide a bit. But interestingly, this still takes the standard sights from the P99, PPQ, PPS, and these even ship with metal sights, not plastic. Overall length is roughly the same, just over 7 inches. Barrel length is 4 inches. It's a new barrel system that's a kind of a two-piece chamber and barrel pressed together again to save on money. I mean, yeah, if you're going to make a cheap pistol. But the barrel was worked fine, and actually, accuracy is very good. One reason I waited to do this video, I loaned this gun and a few others to Chris Bartocci, Small Arm Solutions, because he couldn't get them directly from Walther. And he was suitably impressed with the PPX. Enough so that he called me. But for that, you can check out his video. Still has the pick rail under the slide here. Although this might be more of a Weaver style because of the cutout. It's up to you to decide. Still has an external slide release. And we have the Browning style mag release from the Ppq M2. This can be reversed to the other side. This uses its own magazines. They are 16 rounds again, and they don't have the PVD style finish. They're just kind of a blued style polymer base plate, but they seem plenty reliable. And another change, this is not a striker fired gun. This is a hammer fired gun. Right there. Now the P99, later P99AS, had a trigger system that simulated a double single action hammer. Ironically, by the time we get to the PPX, we have a hammer system that simulates a striker. I always find that kind of funny. It is a very nice trigger pull for an economy gun. Even has a metal, not plastic, trigger. Now, it feels like it's probably a MIM, or at least cast part. But it is, yeah. It's not as plasticky as you would think of a gun. By the way, disassembly is a little bit different than on our standard guns. We have this takedown catch here. You rotate it down. And release your mag. And slide it off. You don't need to decock the hammer. Here's our frame. It still has 4 guide rail points, although they are a little smaller. And we still have a pretty standard spring here. Initially, this was only offered in 9mm, but I believe a couple of years later, I think 2015, they did introduce a 40 cal finally. Right about the time 40 cal was no longer popular, but so it goes. Nice trigger, really is. Nice gun, accurate gun, or so I'm told. Of course, it's full size. And because of its chunkier slide and everything, it is a little bit heavier. It's kind of in the 24 to 25 ounce range. Not a pig, but it is a little bit heavier. So what's the problem? While these did sell, and while owners did like them, most all reviews were positive, they did come in a cheaper, but still a hard case, and they even gave you 2 mags. You know, a lot of economy guns, you get 1 mag. So they cut corners, but not where it would matter. So what's the problem? Well, as we said since our original review, the looks. Yeah, this gun, pretty much when it failed, it didn't fail for what it was, but how it looked. And thus, in 2016, Karl Walther, Ulm, Germany, took the PPX out of production, but they didn't retire the line. They just replaced it with the Walther Creed, which we did a full video on about a year ago. I don't have a Creed here because it's very, very similar. Functional, it's identical. They just reworked the grip a little bit. Mostly they reshaped the slide to give it more of an attractive appearance. And that's all the Creed is a more attractive PPX. I really wish they had named it PPX M2, because this is officially named PPX M1. The whole name Creed, I don't know. Ever since I keep saying it, I keep hearing the Rocky theme in my head. Do we have to go there? Especially with the film about his illegitimate kid out? Anyway, I digress. By 2017, these have been replaced by the Creed, and they really are good guns. And again, even though they had a duty mindset behind them, these were pretty much made for the civilian market, much like our next gun. First introduced in 2014, the Ccp, not CCCP, concealed carry pistol, was designed primarily for the civilian market, the carry market, obviously. Although, of course, a police officer could have it as a backup gun. And all the guns we've looked at so far have been a modified Browning tipping barrel lock breech system, but not the CCP. This is what Walther calls a soft coil system, which is essentially a gas piston system modified from what HK utilized in its P7 back in the 70s and 80s. So you have a short gas piston under the barrel, you have a small port in the barrel, and it recoils the slide. There's a few reasons why. First, that means our barrel is actually fixed to the frame. It doesn't move. It's like on a Ppk, Makarov, what have you. As you can imagine, this is good for accuracy. Another advantage, because of having a true gas system, we can have a pretty light slide pull. It's got a little bit of a initial hitch as it unlocks, but yeah, this is designed for it to be an easy pull for anyone. And then a final advantage to the gas piston: lighter recoil. Now, if you're shooting target ammo, say Wolf, you probably won't notice much. But if you go up to plus P, mini defensive loads, we've done this in the past in videos, it is noticeably lighter recoil, less flip, less pushback, just less snap in general. Other features: it has a pick rail under the barrel, 3 slots. It uses a smaller version of the M2 catch here. It uses a new pattern of mag. This is 8 rounds. Single stack. Bit of a base plate there. No dingus on the trigger. Front and rear slide serrations. Striker fired system. This is kind of returning to the partially cocked style. Now, for the first time, we have a manual safety. And manual safeties on carry guns are always an iffy proposition. It's good to have a safety, but on the other hand, if it can be flicked on or off, not so good. And they've done a pretty good job of making it easy to use, but not where it's going to get hit and accidentally activated. Same goes for the slide release. It's right here. Notice how it has a different style of port than the previous ones. Now, size-wise, this is an interesting critter. Let's compare it. 1 second, folks. It is bigger than the PPS. PPS was designed to be a slim carry, but it's smaller than the Ppq. The CCP is about 6.4 to 6.5 inches long, so a little bit shorter than the P99 Compact, but a teeny bit longer than the PPS. It is about the same height, just a little bit shorter than a P99 Ppq. The PPS had that 3.2 inch barrel. The full size has a 4. The compact P99 has a 3.5. And this manages to pull off really about the same 3.5 inch barrel. It is slimmer than the P99 Compact or P99. It's about 1.1 to 1.2 inches. But it's still a little bit thicker than our PPS, which is 0.9 to 1.0. And these all tend to weigh about the same. This weighs about as much because of the gas system and everything as a full size. It's about 22, maybe 22.5 ounces. So it's not any lighter, but then again, it's not a pig either. So this really was kind of a radical departure for them. And did it pay off? The Ccp was a good seller when it was introduced. It was at a good price point. It was cheaper than the PPS. And while it wasn't as small, it had a lot of the features. And it's not a big gun. Again, it's kind of in that Glock 19 range. And of course, a lot of husbands thought this would be a good gun for their wives because of the lower recoil and the easier to manipulate slide. But there was one major criticism out of the gate. To take it apart, you needed a tool. Now, of course, it comes with a tool, and you can even use a bullet tip. It's not like it's a lock tool, just you need something to flip this back here to slide it off. Some people really hated that. Me being a fan of military guns and accustomed to military guns, I don't like it, but it wasn't a showstopper for me. Another thing, some people thought that it might heat up here. That's kind of one of the negatives for the HK P7, but this doesn't seem to do it as much. And of course, whereas the P7 was meant as a duty pistol with anything from a 8 to a 12 round mag, this was a defensive gun, so you're not going to be rapid firing it a whole lot. And you have more of meat here under the barrel where it would heat up. It also would heat up here on the trigger above it, but it does have a heat shield, and it seems to work quite well. So that seemed to be kind of moot. Another thing, when you notice the slides back, the tip of the firing pin protrudes. That's pretty common for a lot of guns, because at this point in the cycle, there's no bullet in there, and if there was a bullet, so what? It wouldn't ignite it. But some were concerned that when you chamber around, this is very stiff on an empty mag, you could have an accidental discharge. Sorry, there went on no mag. It's very easy to release the slide. Jan and I tried this in safe conditions one afternoon several years ago, and we never could make it ignite, even with ammo known to have very light primers and just slamming that forward. Not saying it could never happen, but again, that seems to be more of a theoretical thing that the internet cooked up when they saw that firing pin tip versus an actual thing. And as we said in that video back then, when you pull back a Glock slide or a slide on a lot of others, not so much on this one, but you can do it on here too if you trip the thing. My point is, it's not uncommon. Lots of pistols have that, so I can't quite reach it. It's a little trip there you can do. But yeah, on Glock slides, you can do that too, seeing the firing pin. Now, the counter argument is, well, it retracts sooner in the cycle, whereas this stays forward. Anyway, it was an internet armchair thing. It does not seem to have been borne out. However, in March of 2017, so fully 3 years after this was released, Walther did issue a voluntary recall. Some people had reported a danger that this, when dropped from a height, could go off. Then it does have a safety for drop safe, but some claim that it could go off in certain situations, when it strikes a different way. Keep in mind, this was designed as a civilian pistol, not a police pistol, so it didn't really go through the rigors that a police service gun would have. Long story short, they had I noticed that this could potentially go off if dropped. And this has happened to a lot of SIG guns, Ruger guns, whatever. It doesn't really happen to Remington handguns because they don't go off even when you pull the trigger most of the time. But, the real smart thing to do is just not drop a loaded gun. But that's in theory, how the world is. So they did that. And then in 2018, they introduced the Ccp M2. I don't have one to show you here because only the real difference is that they went away from the tool-assisted disassembly to more of a traditional latch lever disassembly. And would I prefer the M2? Yeah, probably. But I wouldn't prefer it enough to mess with selling this one, which works really well. It's been a very dependable gun for me that I know and trust. Only for that to get a whole new gun and probably lose a little money in the interim. So, yeah, but it does show Walther trying to correct what was perceived as an issue with the market, which is something they were doing a lot of after taking over from Smith & Wesson. Let's talk about that. After releasing several new models and variants between 2013 and 2015, Walther USA's next step was to look at its existing product line and see what updates could be done. As I mentioned earlier, the PPX was taken out of production in 2016 and would be replaced a year later by the Walther Creed. And at this time, the PPS, which was introduced in the summer of 2007, was coming up on being a decade old. So, in 2016, Walther unveiled the Pps M2. This is another one I recently loaned to Chris, so he's done a video on it, or will have. This came out a little before Christmas of that year. Again, almost exactly 9 years after the original. Now, size-wise, they're the same. 3.2-inch barrel, still weighing around 19 ounces, still about 6.3 inches long, and still use the same trigger system, the partially cocked, the QA style, and they still both use the same Walther sights from the P99. So no fundamental changes there. But they did a lot of minor changes, most of which I like. One I do not, or at least don't see the need for. Remember, the original has the paddle mag release. I really like this release. Left hand, right hand, left-handed, right-handed, doesn't matter. 2 ways to grip it. If your mag's stuck, you can grip it both ways. You can get some really good leverage on that. But with the Ppq M2, Walther introduced the Browning style mag release for the American market because Americans love their push buttons. In Europe, they still do the paddle. Now this can be reversed on the various guns to put it on the other side, but that requires time and a tool. It also means newer mags won't be compatible with older ones. Notice here, the body is pretty much the same, but the notches are different and the base plates are different. So M1 mags, classic mags, will not work. So we have a new mag release. We also got rid of a rail. It's very smooth. Kind of unusual for a modern gun to get rid of a rail. Typically it's the other way around. But they reasoned that no one was using the rails on these because this is a dedicated carry pistol. And it was just making the gun bulkier and potentially could snag for no reason. So they got rid of it. They also moved away from a traditionally rifled bore to polygonal rifling in the bore. They added front and rear slide serrations. They reworked the slide release a bit to make it both slimmer and easier to use. and they gave it the Ppq grip. And they removed that quick safe system that so many were concerned about. This is just a molded on back piece now, kind of like on the PPX. But it's what people wanted, so it's what they delivered. And like the PPX, believe it or not, the Pps M2 was cheaper than what the Pps M1 or Pps Classic had been. Not as cheap as the Ccp, but it did close the gap quite a bit, which was a consideration. Again, the Ppq was cheaper than the P99. And one final thing they did, they reworked the trigger a bit. Now, they didn't go to a full Ppq quick defense trigger. That would be reckless in a carry gun like this. There's a certain point where you do want some resistance, and you do need a bit of a longer pull. So it does have about a 0.2 to 0.3 reset. Like the original. And it's still about a 6-pound pull. But what they did smooth it up a bit. They reworked the transfer bar. It is a nicer trigger to use. Still heavy enough to be safe, but they smoothed it out, reworked it a bit. Make it a little bit better. Now this is the so-called PPS LE or Police Edition. It comes with not true night sights. These are the kind of the glow-in-the-dark sights. Let me see if I can feature them for you. So here are the Pps M2's kind of paint-on night sights. Do my best to show you. Hopefully something's on camera. Or I can just knock the camera over. Trying to move it. There you go. Hopefully I was able to get something for you there. Here's a kind of a POV from behind the sights exactly. Alright, let's get back to the lighted video. Let me know if that worked out. Obviously, I have no way to know myself. Not true Tritium night sights, but the idea was a police officer or anyone else could take their torch for being British or their mag light. It only takes a couple of seconds to charge them up, flash them on, and then you would have glow-in-the-dark sights that would last 10 to 20 minutes if you're going into a dark house or going from indoors to outdoors at night. And they're made of metal, which is nice, not plastic. And they're offered on this edition here. And you can install them on any of them. The LE edition, the police edition, also comes with the compact 6-round mag. And the slightly extended 7-rounder. I think I grabbed the 7. Yeah, I did. I noticed that the 7-rounder on this has a little bit larger of a base plate. If you look, let me see if I can grab it here. On the standard, my pinky, while it can be on there, it kind of wants to slip off, and if you had bigger hands, you'd only kind of get a partial grip where it might hit you right in the knuckle and be uncomfortable. With the M2 7-round mag, they gave it this nice little hump that kind of forces your pinky up. It's a pretty small, shallow notch, but it is much more comfy, and that goes really well with the overall better grip. A neat little thoughtful thing that a lot of companies You see me there, I was trying to do the paddle release because I'm so used to it. Kind of my point about training. And here is the 8-round mag. What I was saying is that most companies wouldn't think to reshape the base plate on one mag. Little thoughts like that really went into the grip that shows that Walther was listening to their market. Notice how rounded the trigger guard is here too. This one is still pretty rounded, but a little more angles to it. The whole gun, the whole M2, they really hit all the edges and just smooth them out. So what do you get with it? Well, yeah, you get a little bit better trigger. You get front slide serrations. You get a better grip with better mag base plates. They did away with the safety feature in the back that many didn't like. You lose a rail, but they determined that wasn't worth it. You go to the push button release, which many love, that I'm not really crazy about, but that's just me, personal taste. And you get it all at a somewhat cheaper price point. So the Pps M2 has been pretty successful for Walther over the past nearly 5 years. And of course, by this time, every polymer striker-fired maker does a slim single-stack 940 gun, including Glock. This time, it was years before Glock would catch up to Walther. And I think with this M2, even if they don't make the absolute best of the best of the best, they make the best, one of the bests. And I think they're still leading the market here with these. It's a very pleasant gun with the 8-round mag. It's very nice to shoot. You get a full grip. It's plenty accurate for what it is. I think the 8-round mags and something else are nice for practice shooting, because with the 6-round mag, a lot of people don't like shooting guns where they're, two-fingering it. So they may not take it out in practice as much. If you're going to carry a gun, you need to be comfortable with it. And therefore, put in the bigger mag so you enjoy shooting it. Yeah, the gun feels very nice. With that, let's move on to our last gun. Along with the PPX, in 2013, Walther introduced the Ppq M2 specifically for the American market that has the Browning-style reversible mag catch. Of course, this meant it had to have new magazines because of how it worked. And they would continue on. The next year, they would release a couple of versions. They would do a standard threaded barrel. They had this first edition that had the M1 style, mine here. They would introduce an M2, Ppq M2 SD with a threaded barrel. They would introduce a Ppq M2 Navy that was meant to be used around water. And they would introduce a Ppq M2 SD Navy, or Navy SD, that had all the features. The next year, 2015, they would introduce the Ppq M2 45. And you guessed it, chambered for 45 ACP. I used to have one. We did a couple of videos on it, but during the buying panic last year, I went ahead and just put it in the store because it needed inventory. It was very similar to the standard M2 in 9 or 40, but it had a slightly longer barrel, slightly bigger, well, quite a bit bigger slide for the 45 round, and it held 12+1, so not too shabby. Then 2016 was the year of revamping the PPS and the PPX. And in 2018, like I said, they introduced an updated version of the Ccp M2. And they introduced what a lot of people have been wanting for a while, which is a little interesting. The Ppq M2 SC. Sometimes I just call it the Ppq C, the Compact. And I say it's interesting because you have the CCP, you have the Pps M2, But some people still wanted a PPQ, but in, actually I should say the P99C, but in the PPQ styling. So ever trying to deliver what the market wanted, that is exactly what Walther introduced. The dimensions are the same. The weight's the same, at least within reason. It just got all the new features. So of course, we have the wonderful quick defense trigger, dingus safety, ambidextrous slide release, shorter slide and barrel, 3.5 inches. We have our front and rear slide serrations. We have a 2-slot rail, which is still an improvement over the single slot. You just couldn't quite get 3 in there. Interestingly, the slide is a little different in the rear here. It's a solid piece, and it's metal here. It's actually weighted a little differently. Internally, there are a few differences. Kind of interesting. We talk about those in detail in our original video. It's worth pointing out that the Ppq 45 used polygonal rifling, much like the Pps M2, but the Ppq Compact here, as far as I know, still uses traditional lands and grooves. If I'm wrong, please let me know, and I know someone will. So of course we went to the Browning style mag catch. And yeah, metal sights. Yeah, you got the treatment, basically. Nice trigger. Still uses the 10-round mag. Interestingly, it's that slick body style without the ribs. Found that interesting that they didn't really update the mag. Here's the original. Of course, they're not interchangeable because of the catch. Here is the version with the finger rest, which doesn't give you any more capacity, but does that. And they would give you the same type of mag for the M2 here, which is nice. It's a good compromise. A little more grip. And they also give you, where am I at? There it is. With at least the version I have, which is the Ppq Compact LE or Police, you get 3 mags total, and you get a 15-round mag with this extension on it. Now they didn't take a 10-rounder and extend it, that'd be crazy. They took a standard full-size M2 body. Notice the smooth, the rougher matte finish in the rounds, and they just gave this little plastic polymer filler, which is a neat solution. So there were some mag options there, and of course this gives you a full grip with full capacity, which, why would you not want that? Probably because you're shooting a compact. See, won't go. Oh, there you go. Thought for a second I had grabbed the other mag. I was like, how'd they get all the way over there? But hey, question not. It's on camera. If it can go wrong, it will go wrong on camera. Like, why, for example, is this mag still out? I thought I put everything back in the box. So yeah, you basically get a gun that's a 1/4 inch longer than the Pps M2, but you get more barrel, and you get 10 or 15 shots versus 6 or 8. And you get the nice trigger of the Ppq. I still don't think going I think this trigger's right on the edge of what would be comfortable to carry. But it's what the people wanted, and if they practice gun safety, it'll be fine. And they already had the two mags out here. Already had the P99 Compact. Mine here has the quick action trigger, but you can get them in the AS's. So why not? So we did a video review back in 2018, shortly after this came out, and we had time to shoot it. And no surprises. It also comes with night sights like the Pps M2 and the Ppq first edition, although those are Tritium. Boop boop. Not a whole lot to say about it. It is exactly as it says on the tin. And for me, is my most recent Walther pickup, even though it's coming up on 3 years old. But we all know how 2020 went. Well, let's wrap things up. These are all mine, 8 of them, and these are my modern Walthers. Not store guns, ones I picked up over 20 years. All beginning with the first time I was handed a P99, a lightly used example, in a store, and just knew the moment it touched my palm that it fit me right. That Italian who designed the grip, he and I must have had similar hands because it fits me very well. And so I proceeded to get the Compact when that came out. Not immediately, but a couple years later. And I've been very impressed with how the PPX, you'd think an economy gun, but no. Of course, I got this first edition Ppq just because it was neat and I wanted to run it with a suppressor, so why not? And why do I still have the Pps M1? For one thing, I like the paddle release, and I'm comfortable with it. I've been using these for so long, it's second nature. And I was there in Germany, specifically in Ulm, Germany, specifically the summer these came out. And so I eagerly awaited them when they made it over to America. And so it has a bit of a sentimental place, and it was really one of the very first guns of its type. But I have to admit that the M2 update is a very successful one. They did a very good job with it, and so if I can get fully used to the mag release, pretty much say it's an improvement all around. And of course with the Ppq Compact, I mostly just got it so I'd have an M2 in the collection. Like I said, I had a 45, but sold it. Don't regret it. It was fun, but a little snappy. I like 9. I think the mag options are kind of neat. As for the Ccp, I don't know. I don't have any other guns that use a gas piston. I should say a handgun that uses a gas piston system, and it is very comfortable to shoot. And it'll eat any kind of ammo. It's not ammo sensitive, from the lightest 9mm all the way up to the stoutest stuff, thanks to the gas piston. I enjoy having an HKP7, but look at the prices on them now. And that kind of brings me to my final point, pricing. The P99 really began, when I said in my review that the P88 was a great gun, but it was way too expensive, it basically bankrupted the company. So when they did the P99, they knew they had to hit a lower cost point, both for R&D and for sticker price. And so the P99s were more expensive than Glocks, but less than a lot of the HKs and SIGs that were coming out, even the polymer frames. So they were kind of right in there with the truly German-made gun, not bad. But with the Ppq, and especially the PPX, they really drove for a good price point. Now I think cutting Smith & Wesson out and just having Walther USA working directly with Karl Walther Germany, GmbH, helped on the logistics side. Another thing, they did kind of quit shipping them with some unnecessary stuff. The original guns had a cleaning rod. Who uses that? I mean, it's there. A lot of the guns they would cut down on shipping extra sights with. And they would go to a slightly simplified case. Now, this one's a different case, of course, and it has extra stuff. But they would start giving mag loaders more common, so I think they felt that. But they cheapened up the packaging a bit, and that helped. But they didn't cheapen up the quality. They cut costs the right way. And therefore, they were able to drive prices down. The Ppq, still a little more expensive than a Glock, but not by a whole lot, especially under these times. So much so of a success that it kind of forced HK to introduce the VP9, their own economy gun. And of course, the PPX is a competitor to truly cheap guns out of, say, Turkey, like the Canik. I think they do a very good job, and it's a true German Walther. It's a great entry-level Walther, baby's first Walther. Don't literally give it to a baby. You know, be reasonable. Wait till they're at least 2. And the CCP kind of continued that trend on and showed Walther innovating, trying something new, kind of a gun specific for the commercial market. I think they succeeded. It's innovative, it's fun, but it wouldn't be my first choice in a carry gun. That would definitely be the Pps M1 or M2. They knocked it out of the park with these. Reliability, good ergonomics. I don't really have a lot to complain about with them. And that continues on with the newest PPQs, whichever variant you want to pick up. They do a 5-inch now. They introduced that 2015 or 14, a long slide 5-incher. They even do a metal framed competition version now. So they've really run with this line, and I hope they will continue to have success, because the more options we have, the better it is for everyone. And Walther has really helped drive innovation, more so than Glock, I would argue. Glock's design was revolutionary for 1980, but it seems like since then they've really rested on their laurels. They've had generations, but look at the Walthers here. They've really evolved their design. When there's a Walther generation change, you can tell it. Sometimes with a Glock, you have to really explain to people the differences in generations. But Walther is willing to try new things and also listen to customers. If a customer doesn't like a feature, they change it. If there's a safety issue, they do a recall. On their dime, mind you. I'm not saying they're perfect, but they have good ergonomics, good accuracy, outstanding reliability. I really dislike them. So, I know a lot of people haven't tried a Walther, although more today than in the past. If you haven't and can, do so. You may not like it, but at least you tried it. But a lot of people end up wanting to get one for themselves. Or 8. Alrighty guys, well, I appreciate you hanging out with me. I'm recording this on a Sunday. I don't know when it'll go up, but it's a way to kill a Sunday evening. I've been wanting to do this, but 3 of these have been on loan to Chris for like 6 months, so I couldn't really finish my setup here. And since they're all together again, here we are. Feel free to comment below. As always, if you could, like, share, and subscribe. Please check out some of our specific reviews on these, if you can. And if you'd like to help support us, check out the link to our Patreon page. This is Misha, and also, on behalf of Jay, who also loves Walthers, we'll catch you very soon, next time.